I suspected my wife was planning a divorce, so I moved my assets. 2 weeks later, she filed, then backtracked when her plan backfired. Hello everyone. Before we start today's video, I need your help. Subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. Hello people. I've been skimming through the posts here for a while, believing I'd never have my own tale to tell. However, life has a way of shocking you, and I've been lugging this about for months. I need to let it out. Let me be clear, I've never been the sort to jump to conclusions or assume the worst. My wife, let's call her M, and I have been together for 6 years and married for 4. Things were solid, or so I thought. We experienced the typical ups and downs, but nothing that made me think, oh, there's a problem here. In reality, throughout the majority of our relationship, we were that couple, completely committed. Colleagues, we laughed at stupid inside jokes, argued for hours about which movie to watch, and had a cadence that just worked. She'd organize elaborate date nights, and I'd treat her to her favorite takeout after a long day. It felt effortless, as if we had figured out the whole love thing. That is why what occurred next struck me like a ton of bricks. The shift began around 6 months ago. At first, it was minor details, things you'd likely miss if you weren't paying close attention. She started carrying her phone everywhere, even when going to the kitchen or folding clothes. Before, her phone would sit on the coffee table for hours, and she didn't mind who picked it up. One day, I joked, "What are you running, some secret spy ring now?" She chuckled and said, "No, work's been emailing me a lot." Okay, fair enough. But a few days later, she created a password on her phone. That caught me off guard. She had never used one before. When I casually asked why, she gave a vague answer about security and hackers. I didn't press it, not wanting to seem paranoid, but it felt off. And it didn't end there. She began taking calls outside the room, which she had never done before. It wasn't subtle. Her phone would ring and she'd say, "Oh, let me just grab this real quick," before disappearing into the bedroom or stepping out onto the porch. If I asked who it was, she'd just say, "Just a friend from work." Then I noticed a new habit, keeping her phone face down on the table. I didn't even know that was a thing until I reached over to hand her something and she hastily moved her phone out of the way. It was one of those blink and you miss it moments, but it stayed with me. However, it wasn't just the phone. She started to feel distant in other ways. Conversations that used to flow easily now felt like pulling teeth. If I brought up future plans, like, "Where should we go for our anniversary?" Or, "Do you think we should start saving for a new car?" she'd simply nod and say, "Yeah, we'll see," before changing the subject. It all came together for me on a random Wednesday. She informed me she was meeting a friend for coffee after work. That didn't sound strange. She does that occasionally. I happened to be running errands in the same area and thought, why not surprise her? It'll be cute. When I arrived, however, she wasn't with her friend. She was standing outside the cafe, pacing with her phone pressed to her ear. I stayed in my car because something about her tone seemed serious. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but I overheard phrases like, "It's almost ready," and "starting fresh soon." My stomach sank. I couldn't figure out what she was saying exactly, but it didn't sound like a job or friend conflict. It sounded grander, like something she had planned. When she returned home, I casually asked how the coffee date went. She told me a complete narrative about her friend complaining about her boyfriend. I nodded and tried to act normal, but my mind was racing. That night, as we were preparing dinner, she randomly said, "I just think we should have everything in one place. You know, all our account info, passwords, documents, that kind of thing. Just in case of emergency." I paused. "What do you mean?" I asked. She shrugged. "I just think it's smart. What if something happens to one of us, or we need to make a big financial decision quickly?" Her logic made sense on the surface, but the way she expressed it felt rehearsed, too polished, like she'd been waiting for the right moment to bring it up. I nodded and mumbled something like, "Yeah, I guess that's a good idea," but inside, alarms were ringing. But why suddenly so concerned about finances, when we'd always kept things loose and separate? That night, I couldn't stop replaying her words in my head. Was I overreacting? Was this just responsible adult behavior? But then I remembered the phone calls, the cafe conversation, and how distant she'd been. It was all starting to add up, and I didn't like the picture it was painting. Until that point, I hadn't taken any action. But a few days later, she brought it up again. We were in the kitchen. I was making a sandwich, and she was scrolling on her phone, when she said, "Have you thought more about organizing the bank stuff? Like, do you know where all the account details are?" I put the knife down and turned to her. "Okay, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light but firm. "You've been bringing up the finances a lot lately. Is there something we need to talk about?" She looked up from her phone, surprised that I pressed her. "No, nothing's wrong," she replied quickly. "I just think it's important, that's all. You know, for emergencies." "Emergencies like what?" She shrugged, expression unreadable. "I don't know, just life stuff. It's not a big deal, I promise. I just think it's something we should get on top of." Her answer was ambiguous. I nodded and let it go, but the way she avoided giving a direct explanation made me even more suspicious. It didn't feel like a casual suggestion anymore. It felt like she was hiding something. But I still didn't know what. The next day, while she was at work, I decided to look into our finances. I logged into our joint account and found something unexpected. Over the past month, a few small transfers had occurred, not large amounts, but odd enough. They weren't for bills, groceries, or anything routine. I couldn't find a clear reason behind them. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it looked like she had been quietly withdrawing money for something I couldn't identify. I considered confronting her, but something told me to wait. If I was wrong, I'd look like a paranoid idiot. If I was right, I needed to be careful. It started eating at me, so I reached out to someone I trusted, an old college friend who's also a lawyer. I explained what I'd discovered, trying not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. "Look," he said after I told him everything, "I'm not saying something's definitely going on, but you're not crazy for wanting to be prepared. If you're worried about protecting your assets, now's the time to act. Better safe than sorry." He walked me through some basic steps, legal but quiet procedures I could take to shield my finances if something were to happen. I'll admit it felt drastic. Like I was preparing for a disaster I couldn't even define yet. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If she really was planning something, and I was starting to believe she was, I needed to protect myself. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about everything we'd built together. I kept replaying memories in my head, our wedding day, late-night talks about our future, the silly inside jokes. How had we gotten to this point? Taking these steps felt like surrendering, like I was giving up on the trust we once had. But I couldn't ignore the signs any longer. That evening, while she was out, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. My hands were shaking. I reviewed every account, bank, investments, even the house deed. Every document I examined felt like a betrayal. But a quiet voice inside kept reminding me, this was about survival, not sabotage. I compiled a list of everything I could move or protect, planning how to do it without raising red flags. It weighed heavily on me. I had trusted her completely for years, and now I was playing defense. I eventually called my mother. I didn't tell her everything, just enough. "I need you to hold on to some things for me for a while," I said. "It's nothing bad, just something I need to do to protect myself. Just in case." She was silent for a moment, probably trying to read between the lines. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "Yeah," I lied. "It's just a precaution. Nothing to worry about." She didn't push. "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need." I hung up with a mixture of relief and shame. I hated involving her in this mess, but knowing she had my back gave me some clarity in a chaotic situation. By the time Em came home that night, I had already started the process. I transferred most of my assets, cash, investments, even the house, into my mother's name. I left just enough in the joint account to avoid suspicion, but everything else was locked down. She didn't notice. She walked in, kissed me on the cheek, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I pretended everything was fine, but inside I was torn. Part of me felt like a traitor. Another part felt relieved, finally in control of a situation that had been slipping away. Over the next 3 days, I tried to maintain normalcy. I didn't want her to sense anything had changed. She seemed content, actually unusually cheerful. But instead of calming me, it made me even more suspicious. What stood out was that she never mentioned finances again. Not once. Not even after I had directly asked her the last time. It was as if the entire topic had vanished from her memory. At first, I thought maybe I had overreacted. Maybe she dropped the subject because it really wasn't important. But the more I thought about it, the more deliberate it seemed, like she was avoiding it on purpose, especially after I pushed back. I caught her looking at me now and then, watching, assessing. Every time I noticed, she'd quickly look away, pretending to be absorbed in her phone, a book, or the TV. It was subtle, but I felt it. Like she was waiting for me to bring it up again. Testing the waters. I wasn't about to give her the green light. Something was coming, I didn't know when or how, but I knew I needed to stay ahead. That night, I made sure everything was locked down tight. I reviewed all the documents one last time: bank accounts, investment accounts, the property deed. Everything had been legally transferred into my mother's name and placed in an uncontested trust. I even called her again to confirm she had all the necessary paperwork. 2 weeks passed and things felt normal. Too normal, frankly. She started acting more affectionate. She brought up random things like job ideas or what to make for dinner, topics she hadn't shown interest in for months. The sudden change threw me off. It didn't feel like reconnection. It felt rehearsed. Part of me started wondering if I'd imagined everything. Maybe her behavior was just stress-related. Maybe I had read too much into things. I almost convinced myself that I'd jumped the gun. And then, on a random Friday night, it happened. She sat me down on the couch, turned off the television, and said the words I somehow already knew were coming. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. "I think we should get a divorce," she said. Her voice was eerily calm, like she was commenting on the weather. There was no emotion, no tension, just cold detachment, like she had rehearsed the line 100 times. I stared at her, unsure how to respond. She kept talking, about needing space, figuring herself out, feeling like she'd lost her identity in the marriage. Standard breakup script. It all felt like filler. Then she said something that carried a different tone. "You know, I've made a lot of sacrifices for you over the years, and I don't think you really appreciate them. I deserve more." That part stung. It wasn't just that she wanted to end the marriage, it was how she framed it. Like she was owed something. As if I had taken from her, and she was just reclaiming what she deserved. As she kept talking, a question gnawed at me. Why now? Then she let something slip. "A friend of mine has been helping me see things more clearly." She didn't look at me when she said it. "A friend?" I didn't interrupt. I let her finish, but in my head I was piecing things together. Whoever this friend was, they weren't just offering emotional support. They were coaching her, guiding her, hyping her up to leave me, not as a choice, but as a strategy. The more she talked, the clearer it became that this wasn't spontaneous. It had been building for a while. She spoke in terms of sacrifice, how she gave up parts of herself for the marriage, how I didn't value her enough, how she deserved more. Not once did she mention anything I'd done wrong, specifically. It was all vague and one-sided. But I knew I'd been there. I worked hard to give her the life she said she wanted. When she asked to move closer to her job, I agreed, even though it meant a longer commute for me. When she wanted to go on that expensive yoga retreat last year, I figured out how to make it work. I even gave up a vacation I was looking forward to so she could go. I supported her through 2 career changes, telling her it was okay to take the risk because I believed in her. I listened when she vented about work, her family, her friends. I remembered the little things she mentioned loving. I planned date nights. I tried. I wasn't perfect, but I showed up. And I sure as hell wasn't inattentive. That's why her "I deserve more" line cut so deep. It wasn't true. It wasn't fair. She wasn't upset about how I treated her. Something else had changed, in her. Maybe it was this so-called friend, maybe something more. But the woman sitting in front of me wasn't the one I married. and I wasn't going to let her rewrite our marriage story to suit whatever new narrative she had crafted. I didn't argue. I just nodded and said something neutral like, "If that's how you feel, then I guess we need to figure out next steps." She seemed caught off guard, like she expected me to beg, to plead, to fight for us. But I didn't. Because by then, I already knew this wasn't about salvaging anything. It was about protecting myself from what was clearly a coordinated exit strategy, one that I had narrowly anticipated in time. After that conversation, she moved into her own apartment. And then, on Monday, the divorce papers arrived. They weren't just a formal end to our marriage, they were an ambush. The paperwork didn't simply seek to end things. It aimed to take everything. Half the house, my savings, my investments, even the car. There were vague clauses about spousal support that didn't make sense, especially considering her high-paying job. At first, I thought she was just angry and lashing out. But the way everything was worded, so specific, so aggressive, made it clear that this wasn't her doing it alone. Someone was guiding her, coaching her, helping her draw up a financial blueprint for destruction. I had to know who. I couldn't just ask her directly, so I started digging in my own way. I checked her social media. She hadn't blocked me, and while she didn't post much, I combed through her tagged photos and comments. That's when I noticed a pattern, a guy named Jake. He had been consistently liking and commenting on her posts. Nothing overly flirty, but persistent. I clicked on his profile, it was public. He looked like just a regular 30-something marketing guy. But as I scrolled through his timeline, something made my stomach turn. He had posted a photo at the exact cafe where I had seen her on the phone weeks earlier, the day I overheard her saying, "It's almost ready," and "starting fresh soon." The post was from that day. I kept scrolling. Subtle signs piled up. A comment on one of her pictures that said, "You've got this." A selfie taken inside what appeared to be her new apartment. Individually, none of it was damning. But together, it painted a clear picture. Jake wasn't just a friend. He was likely the friend she had referred to when she said someone was helping her see things clearly. I still didn't know exactly what Jake's role was, but I knew I needed answers. So I reached out to Lisa, one of our mutual friends. She and Em had been close for years. I kept it casual at first, asked if she'd spoken to my wife lately or noticed anything odd. Lisa replied quickly and defensively, claiming she didn't know anything. She shut the conversation down fast, as if she didn't want to get involved. So I tried someone else, Emily, another friend from our circle. Same approach, start light, feel it out. She was hesitant at first, offering vague, non-committal responses. But when I gently pushed a bit further, she cut the call short. That only made me more suspicious. Then, unexpectedly, Emily called back. She said she had to be sure this wouldn't come back to her. I promised it wouldn't. After a long pause, she told me what she knew. Apparently, Em had been spending a lot of time with Jake, a coworker. According to Emily, Jake wasn't just someone she confided in, he was actively involved in advising her on the divorce. He had been helping her navigate how to secure what she believed she was owed. Hearing his name confirmed everything. This wasn't just about her needing space or clarity. Someone else was in the picture, and they were helping her not just to leave, but to leave with as much of my life as possible. I decided I had to see it with my own eyes. That Saturday, I drove to her apartment building. I parked a block away and waited. I wasn't planning to cause a scene, I just wanted confirmation. A few hours later, my patience paid off. She and Jake walked out of the building together. They didn't hold hands or act overtly romantic, but the way they walked, close, leaning toward each other, said enough. They got into his car and drove off. I didn't follow them. I didn't need to. In that moment, everything clicked into place. The emotional distance. The secrecy. The sudden push to consolidate finances. The calmly delivered divorce talk. The demands in the legal papers. It wasn't just a breakup. It was a strategy. She hadn't just fallen out of love. She'd found someone new and had been methodically preparing to leave me with nothing, while moving forward with him. I went home, my mind racing. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt most was how calculated it all was. She hadn't just given up on the marriage. She'd made the decision, planned her exit, and built a new life with another man before ever telling me she wanted out. But what she didn't know was that I had already seen this coming. Our first mediation session was tense. Her lawyer came in carrying a binder so thick it looked like he was prosecuting a multinational corporation. He laid out her demands like they were perfectly reasonable: half the house, all shared assets, the car, and ongoing spousal support, even though she earned a solid salary herself. I stayed quiet. I let him talk. Then my attorney calmly slid a folder across the table and said, "Before we move forward, I think everyone should take a look at these." Her lawyer started flipping through the documents. At first, he looked bored, but then his expression started to change. His brow furrowed. His page-turning slowed. "What is this?" he asked, clearly rattled. "These are notarized documents showing the legal transfer of all my client's major assets into a trust under his mother's name," my lawyer replied smoothly. "These transfers were completed several weeks before the divorce filing. The trust is irrevocable and fully compliant with state law." The room went dead silent. Her lawyer turned to her, visibly frustrated. "You didn't mention this." She snatched the documents and began flipping through them. Her face turned pale. "This can't be real," she muttered, staring at the signed and notarized paperwork. Then she looked at me, eyes wide with rage. "You planned this," she hissed. "You knew I was going to file. You set this up to screw me over." I said nothing. There was nothing to say. Her lawyer demanded clarification, so mine laid it all out, slowly, clearly, methodically. Everything had been transferred well before the divorce filing. The dates aligned. The signatures were official. The trust was airtight. There was nothing they could do. She leaned forward, seething. "You're unbelievable. I can't believe you'd do this to me." Still, I remained quiet. This wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting myself, because she had made it clear she wasn't leaving quietly. The mediation ended with her lawyer muttering something about needing to rethink strategy. But the truth was, they had no strategy left. As we exited the building, she pulled me aside. Her face was a mix of fury and desperation. "This isn't over," she said in a low voice. "You're going to regret this." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I already regret trusting you. That's the only regret I have." Things escalated faster than I expected after that mediation session. She went into full meltdown mode. It started with the calls, endless calls. At first, she sounded calm, maybe even remorseful. Her voicemails began with lines like, "I think we just need to talk. I know this got messy, but we can fix it." But I didn't respond. By the second day, the tone of her messages changed fast. Some voicemails were tearful, full of regret and longing. The next would be filled with rage. She'd swing between sobbing and screaming, accusing me of being cold, selfish, cruel, blaming me for everything wrong in her life. Still, I stayed silent. My lawyer had advised me not to engage, and honestly, I had nothing left to say. I wasn't going to play her game anymore. When the calls and texts failed to get a response, she started telling stories. Part 14. A Web of Lies. Mutual friends started reaching out, confused. Apparently, she was telling people that the divorce was a prank. A joke. Some elaborate test of our relationship. She said it wasn't real. Just something we were doing for fun. Of course, people started poking holes in that story almost immediately. If it's a prank, why did you file legal paperwork? Why hire a lawyer and demand half his assets? When that didn't stick, she shifted her narrative again. Now she was saying it wasn't a joke, but a test, one that I had failed. She painted herself as the victim, claiming I had gone too far. That my actions had broken the trust in the marriage. Some people believed her, at first. I started getting strange messages from acquaintances. "Wow, I didn't know things were that rough. I hope you guys can work it out." Even her brother messaged me angrily. "You should have talked it out instead of being so drastic." It was frustrating, sure, but I stayed quiet. I knew the truth would come out eventually. And it did. It came from an unexpected source, a mutual acquaintance named Matt. We weren't particularly close, but we'd always been friendly. A few weeks after mediation, he messaged me and said, I have something you need to see. When we met up, he pulled out his phone and showed me a string of text messages between her and Jake. I stared at the screen, stunned. How did you get these? I asked. Matt explained that Jake had a mutual friend, someone who'd overheard enough to realize something shady was going on. Apparently, Jake had been bragging about how he was helping her secure her future. When it became clear that securing her future meant trying to bleed me dry, the friend took screenshots and gave them to Matt, who brought them to me. Jake wasn't just emotionally supportive. He was strategizing with her. One message from her said, "Once the settlement's done, we'll have everything we need. I just need him to agree to the terms." Jake replied, "Don't back down. Make him feel guilty if you have to. He owes you. We'll start fresh once you've got the money." I just sat there, numb, reading through it all. This wasn't miscommunication. It wasn't a bad breakup. It was manipulation. A cold, calculated plot to exploit my trust, take what I had built, and start a new life with someone else, funded by me. The screenshots Matt showed me were undeniable. Her plan, Jake's role, and their manipulation were all laid bare in black and white. I thanked him and he left, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I had just seen. This wasn't an emotional outburst or a messy divorce. This was premeditated betrayal. The texts began to circulate. Matt shared them with a couple of our mutual friends, people who had previously been neutral or even supportive of her. And once they saw the truth, everything changed. People stopped buying her stories. The prank, narrative? Gone. The relationship test, angle? Laughed off. The sympathy she had worked so hard to build evaporated almost overnight. Even the ones who had defended her began to pull away. The shift was immediate and almost visible. Suddenly, those who once stood by her side were silent. Some even reached out to me. A couple of mutual friends apologized for assuming the worst about me. I didn't know. If I had seen those messages earlier, I never would have taken her side. Her closest allies? They went quiet. Some blocked her. Others ghosted. She was unraveling not just legally, but socially. By the time we reached the final phase of the divorce proceedings, everything had collapsed around her. She had no case left. Her lawyer quietly withdrew the outrageous demands after realizing the documentation I provided was airtight. The trust I'd created with my mother? Legally unbreakable. All those aggressive claims about the house, the savings, the assets, gone. She walked away with nothing but her personal belongings. And as for Jake? He disappeared the moment things got messy. No more texts. No more subtle encouragements. No more planning for their fresh start. From what I could gather, he had been selling her a fantasy, and once he saw she wasn't going to walk away with the financial haul she promised, he vanished without a word. Her confidence vanished with him. The calls and texts kept coming, but they changed again. No more anger. No more threats. Just desperation. "Can we just talk? Please, I'll do anything to fix this. You don't have to forgive me, but can't we just settle this? I'll drop everything if you just talk to me." I didn't answer any of them. I couldn't. It was too late. Even her family started backing away. Her brother, the same one who had lashed out at me before, reached out quietly one evening and said, "I didn't know what she was doing to you. I'm sorry I ever took her word for it." Her inner circle had collapsed. She had burned every bridge, one manipulation at a time. When the dust settled, I had the house. I had my savings. Most importantly, I had something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace of mind. My mother, as always, was my rock. She came over with buckets of paint and a list of ideas for reclaiming the space, making it mine again. We painted the walls. We moved furniture. We cleared out every trace of the storm that had passed through my life. For the first time in months, I wasn't second-guessing every interaction. I wasn't watching for signs of betrayal. I wasn't holding my breath waiting for the next blow. I was breathing again. She's just a chapter now. One I no longer revisit. The rest of the story? That's mine to write. Alone, but free. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.